This episode of the Multiracialverse podcast is brought to you by Eviton Couture, a brand born from a powerful vision and a deep connection to heritage. Founded by Shinnecock brothers Jason Tech King and Wayon Moon Smith, Eviton represents resilience and pride. From handmade tie-dye to wellness-focused athletic wear, each piece is crafted with intention and positivity, smudged with sage for good vibes, and delivered to you with love. Join the Eviton family on their journey of empowerment and inspiration. Hit up Moon on Instagram at Eviton_KS. That is native spelled backwards _KS to view product and place an order. Eviton Couture. Feel the spirit of resilience in every stitch. Did you ever have any of those feelings of the other being a black child in this white suburb?
Yeah, it really started like when I was little, just noticing differences in people, noticing curiosities about my hair, from other people, right? The jokes about people saying, oh, I went to the beach and now I'm almost as tan as you. Like that started. Really. But I think for me, it really came out when we started coming of dating age.
Okay.
And really I had crushes on all sorts of people, right? It wasn't just a racial thing for me, but
sure.
It really was clear that most people who were interested in dating someone like me were also Black.
Okay.
And so, although we have mixed kids in our schools, right? My experience really centered on, we date people that look like us, or people that look like me were the ones that were interested in me.
Welcome to episode 23 of the Multiracialverse podcast. I am your host, Antonio Fernandez. Today, we're joined by the endlessly creative, curious, and kind Jess Owens-Young, a multidisciplinary artist whose work is a celebration of Black resilience, joy, and identity in America. Growing up in Maryland, Jess was an ever-curious child who balanced her love for sports and art with a deep passion for creative expression. That passion evolved into a lifelong journey, leading her to become a self-taught artist, crafting vibrant and thought-provoking pieces that reflect the essence of Black life and culture. Jess's art is a fusion of techniques blending acrylics, oil pastels, pigment sticks, and collage to create portraits and figurative works layered with recurring symbols. From happy face hats representing joy and resilience, to glasses symbolizing the lens through which Black narratives are viewed, her pieces are rich with depth and meaning. Her inspiration draws from legendary artists like Emory Douglas and Alice Neal, as well as the literary brilliance of Octavia Butler and Toni Morrison. But Jess's story doesn't stop at the canvas. As a queer Black artist, she is redefining modern Black pop art and culture while navigating her own journey of self-identity. In today's episode, Jess shares her exploration of what it means to be unapologetically authentic, both in life and in her creative process. Tune in to hear how she weaves personal experiences into her art and challenges us all to see the beauty and complexity in the Black experience. Hello, Jess. Welcome to the Multiracialverse. How you doing today?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for making time. I think you mentioned recently that school is starting back up soon.
Yes.
It's like, where did summer go, right?
Summer is gone.
And that's one thing I love, and we'll get into your art in probably many different ways, but I love the flowers, the reoccurrence of the flower themes in your art, and it really makes me think of summer. So but now maybe they'll change as we go into fall and winter. So
maybe.
Yeah. Awesome. So tell us about yourself. Tell us where you were born and a little bit about your childhood.
Sure. So my name is Jessica Owens-Young. You can call me Jess. I was born and raised in a town in southern Maryland called Waldorf. So Waldorf, Maryland is home for me. I went to public schools there. I enjoyed my childhood, had a very diverse group of childhood friends. I think that's where my love for all different types of foods came from, in all honesty. So, like, for example, I had a babysitter who was from Trinidad. And so that's where I learned to love curry chicken. And like my friends are just from all over. So I'm really thankful for that part of my upbringing. My parents are Josephine and William, and my mom is an accountant, and she went all the way up to being a CFO at one point, and my dad didn't finish high school. And so he was a mechanic. And so it was really interesting to have that kind of juxtaposition of different backgrounds, you know, with my mom, who earned her MBA while I was little, to my dad demonstrating what it looks like to really be self-educated in a way and to kind of show how to continue learning outside of formal institutions by following your own curiosities.
I love that.
So for instance, I would always see him reading coin books. He collected coins. So I would see him reading those. I would see him reading auto manuals when he would have to go up for different certifications and stay current, you know, as cars rapidly evolved, you know, in the 80s and 90s. So that was a really cool part of my upbringing. I was a very active kid. I loved being outside. I played soccer.
Were you an only child? Sorry.
So I was kind of raised as an only child because my sister is 12 years older than me.
Oh, okay.
And so like, some of my earliest memories of my sister are really like her graduating from high school and going off to college.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
So no, I'm not an only child, but I kind of grew up like one.
What was Waldorf like as far as the demographics?
Yeah, so it was a predominantly white area at that time. The demographics have changed now, but at that time it was definitely a predominantly white area. But like I said, I had friends from all over, and so there were, you know, people from mixed racial backgrounds. There were Black folks there, you know, that had long histories in Charles County, and you know, my friends, you know, their parents immigrated from, you know, South Korea, from Japan, from India. And so that was really cool to be able to experience that.
What brought your parents there, and what was also maybe driving this kind of mix or melting pot effect?
Yeah, my dad grew up in the next county over, called St. Mary's County in Southern Maryland. So yeah, I have long family ties.
Oh, right on.
And
that's cool.
My mom was born in North Carolina, but my grandma moved up here in her, I think, late teens or early 20s, something like that. And then my mom joined her a little while after she got settled up here. So it was kind of a part of that, you know, that Great Migration story in a sense.
Yeah.
And, you know, my grandma came up here for work and for better educational opportunities. My great grandparents were sharecroppers in North Carolina. And so my grandma wanted something different. And so she found a way to come up here. And as for why my parents settled in Waldorf, I think I remember my mom saying something about, like, it was a relatively newish neighborhood. And she wanted to be in an area where the public school system was good.
Yeah. And it sounds like your grandmother, your mom's mom, obviously, did your mom say that she pushed her towards the idea of education? Or, you know, because that's interesting, because it's the different generations. And, you know, it's like there was a point of where it's like, you know, it's only you have to go to school, or there's some they're like, well, you can get a job like your father did, that that you could find your way doing that and still make a good living. And what was that like for your grandma and your mom?
For my grandma, I don't know if she had external pressure.
Yeah.
When I talked to my grandma about that time, it seems like her responses were really internally driven, that she wanted a different kind of life, that she had her own ambitions that she wanted to pursue. And so I think that, her deciding to leave North Carolina and come up here to Maryland was really a result of her own drive.
Yeah.
She doesn't often say, her mother or her father pushed her. However, whenever I would visit down in North Carolina when my great grandparents were alive, they would always talk about education or ask about how school was going. My great grandfather had this saying, and he would say, go get that learning in your head, and so they understood the value of education.
Right on. So what did your early education look like? You're in this town, predominantly white. You're an artist now and a professor, but did you have an affinity to art? Your parents, one was an accountant, you said, and the other was a mechanic. Obviously, mechanics, accountants can be creative with numbers, and mechanics can be definitely, it's a very creative type of work, almost like an artist putting things together and taking them apart. Tell us about your childhood as far as what you were drawn to, as far as your hobbies and passions.
Yeah, I was drawn to almost everything.
Yeah.
I was a very curious kid and still am very curious about a lot of things. I was really into science. And so one of my fondest memories is that my dad built me a little playhouse in the backyard, and on the inside I had it set up like a school. And so I had a little desk. I had, one of those microscopes that you just pick up, in the kids section from the toy store. And I remember teaching my stuffed animals, teaching myself. And even in the summer, I was one of those weird kids that wanted to have a workbook to complete over the summer. And so my mom we would go to the school supply store and we would pick up a few workbooks at the beginning of summer, and I would work through those as entertainment in a way. So I've always been nerdy, but I've also always been creative. And so I remember, having those big art sets that, a lot of kids get, that have the crayons and the watercolor and the types of paints and markers and things like that. I remember my easel that I had. I remember watching Bob Ross at my grandma's house. When she would watch me. So art played a big role, especially in my early childhood, but it kind of drifted away as I became a more serious athlete. I played soccer. And as soccer started to get more serious, I needed to make choices of where I was going to put my time. And soccer won. And so I played soccer seriously for about 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I didn't come back to art until after I put my cleats up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Did your parents, obviously, did they follow your passion of wanting to learn? And since your mom had a degree, was there always talk about education in college?
Yeah, and not just from my parents, from my teachers.
Yeah,
as well. That was kind of the expectation for as long as I could remember, and my dad too. Despite not having gone to school, he was always very encouraging about me going to college.
That's awesome.
And back to the creative question, my parents are creative in their own way. So my mom was always interested in like interior design, and she would get like architectural digests, and I would flip through I would make collages out of those.
Oh, nice.
At one point, I really seriously considered becoming an architect. And so I used to draw floor plans and buildings and things like that. And to me, that was kind of a mixture of my mom and my dad, because my dad would draw plans. So like I mentioned him building the playhouse for me. He would draw plans of things that he would build, or just draw stuff. Yeah. And so I would watch him drawing and mimic what he was doing, and with measurements and things like that. So yeah, they're definitely both creative in their own ways.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you ever have any of those feelings of the other being a black child in this white suburb, or was it? What was that like? Because you did say you had mixed, mixed friends or friends that were, yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it really started like when I was little, just noticing differences in people, noticing curiosities about my hair, from other people, right? The jokes about people saying, "Oh, I went to the beach and now I'm almost as tan as you." Like that started. Really. But I think for me, it really came out when we started coming of dating age. Okay. And really I had crushes on all sorts of people, right? It wasn't just a racial thing for me, but
sure.
It really was clear that most people who were interested in dating someone like me were also Black.
Okay.
And so, although we have mixed kids in our schools, right? My experience, really centered on, we date people that look like us, or people that look like me were the ones that were interested in me. Even when, I'm not the best flirter. But even when I would try to flirt, at that time with guys, of a different race, like it was always socially awkward, and it wasn't really reciprocated. So that was really strange, but that changed in college.
Yeah.
So once I went to college, then dating outside my race it kind of opened up. But at home.
Do you still have roots in Waldorf, or?
No, my parents moved.
Okay.
Yeah. They ended up selling the house. They were there for 30-something years, and they ended up selling that house and bought their retirement house a few counties over, and got the land that they wanted, like the sunroom my mom always wanted. And so it's cool to see their dreams come into fruition.
Were you were you, as far as you played soccer, and then you said you were nerdy as far as, really enjoying science and other things. Were you also quiet, or what was your personality like?
No. I would talk a lot. I am an introvert.
Okay.
But in class, I would talk a lot just because things are just so interesting. So I didn't typically talk about like pop culture and things like that. I like ideas. I liked studying. I like talking about what the teacher was talking about in class, things like that. So yeah.
And with that, pop culture, a lot of times we tend to make our we use that to make our opinions or others on other things. Did people ever say, based on what they've seen on TV or pop culture, that like, oh, you don't act like, other Black individuals that we've seen on TV or other things like that?
Yeah, I don't know if it was explicitly said. I don't have like distinct memories of that, but I definitely felt like a different kind of Black person.
Yeah.
You know, and I often say that even though I don't have the best hand-eye coordination, I'm more of a foot-eye coordination kind of person. I never tried to learn basketball. Even though I love the sport, I never tried to learn basketball because as a kid, I had this idea in my mind that I wasn't Black enough to play basketball.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And did your parents ever reinforce what being Black meant, like, to them? And then as far as saying to you, hey, Jess, like, you are enough of this, or this is what being Black means to us?
So I think that came across in an emphasis on learning Black history beyond the classroom.
Oh, right on. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
My parents didn't really say, as Black people, we do this, or like Black people don't do those things, right?
Yeah.
I think that I was taught how to behave as a Black person in order to be protective of myself. And so, like, the way that we speak, the code switching, right? That was definitely modeled right, at home, how to do that.
Yeah.
But I think that my parents both demonstrated a range of Blackness within themselves, especially my dad being lighter complexion. And clearly you could see that our family history had, race mixing. We had European ancestry on actually both sides of my family, but it was especially clear on my dad's side. And so he came from more of a rural background. And I mentioned my mom did spend a lot of time in North Carolina before she came up here, but I would say her like most formative years of upbringing were more suburban. And she also worked in Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay.
a lot. And so like the way that she moved was different. Compared to my dad growing up in rural St. Mary's County in Maryland. So they showed just how to be Black in different ways.
Yeah, I love that. That's I mean, the premise of the podcast started with me very myopic and like just saying like I'm mixed or multiracial and it's like this or this, and I think having conversations like this about the spectrum within even races or ethnicities that are the same, like is there's so many nuances and so many beautiful things that can be passed on to individuals about the fact that there is no one way to be,
Yeah, we're not a monolith.
Yeah. And so you went to college. Did you find it easier? Did you go local, or did you find it easier to find places where you felt like, because it didn't sound like you had an issue with feeling like you fit in school, right?
Yeah, I knew where my group was.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think also being an athlete brought a different layer to it, right? And being a pretty decent athlete, right? Playing soccer and also running track.
Yeah.
I think that kind of made me I don't want to say a unicorn because there's definitely other people like me, but and I was a nerdy jock. So that meant that I had, my core group of friends, but I also had like associates with other people in different groups throughout middle school and high school.
Oh, right on.
So I knew where I fit in, but I also knew where I could get along.
Yeah.
I might not be in that core, but I could flow.
Did that identity and feeling change and significantly in college? And if so, how did or didn't it?
No, because I was a nerdy jock in college. So I did go pretty locally. I went to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, which was like an hour or so from my house. And I got a scholarship. I was a part of this program called the Sondheim Scholars for Public Affairs, for folks who are interested in public service work and like government and political science and things like that. So I did that, but I also played soccer in college. So I was still a nerdy jock in college.
Was the intention to go to college to play soccer, and then whatever happened educationally happened, or did you have something that you were interested in when you also signed to play soccer, or decided to play soccer there?
Yeah, it was actually a little bit of both.
Yeah.
And so in my junior year of high school, a small group of us got to go visit the president of UMBC.
Oh, yeah.
And so I got to meet Dr. Freeman Rabowski there, and was, like most people, very impressed and felt a connection to UMBC. And also, I was a part of the Maryland Olympic Development Program, their soccer team, and the coach of that team was the coach at UMBC. And so I vibed well with the coach. I wanted to continue playing for her. Yeah. And so that just kind of came together. And I liked the campus. It was small enough that I didn't feel lost or like a number, but also big enough where everybody didn't know everybody.
Oh, right on. Wow. Yeah. Wow. And so in this journey, at what point did you realize or recognize like your sexual identity, and start to try to figure out a way to come to not terms per se, but come to terms with, this is my sexual identity, and this is also part of my identification, my ID. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had an inkling when I was younger. Yeah. And especially around like 14 or so. But I kind of, I don't want to say like shoved it away, but I didn't really explore that part of me until college. Yeah. And it was between like my sophomore and junior years of college where I was like, oh, I'm queer. Okay. Yeah. And so let's try to navigate that. I had my first serious girlfriend in college, for a few years, and, dated some other ladies, and, got comfortable with, okay, this is who I am. Yeah. So now let's learn how we navigate, not just as a woman, not just as a Black person, but as a queer Black woman, in this society. So yeah, I would say I seriously like reckoned with my own beliefs too. Sure. I had to work through some internalized homophobia in a way. Yeah. And fear, of being out and what that would be like for me. Again, already having these identities. Yeah. And then you're adding another identity outwardly.
Were those fears brought on by anything, say, for instance, such as, having to tell your parents and thinking like, oh, what are my parents? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Having to tell my parents and my family, what my mentors might think, this was like 2002. Okay. 2003. Yeah. That time period. So, it wasn't like, coming out in the 60s or 70s, but it wasn't like today. Yeah. Too. Yeah. Even though today I would not say everyone has it easy, coming out, but true. It's a little more accepted. And more, in our culture, like outwardly in our culture. So yeah, the fears of having to tell people and not knowing if that would bring harm to me, and not just physical harm, but like, psychological harm too. Even now when I meet someone new and I say like my wife, I wait for that moment to see if the vibes change, is this person safe for me to engage with? So that's still, that's still happening.
Yeah. Where do you live? May I ask where you live currently?
Yeah. Right outside of Baltimore.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think do you feel when you told your parents what was the reaction, and I tried to figure out the right way to frame the question around your ethnicity and queerness, like what the relationship you felt like being Black and being queer, how was that affecting you? If that makes sense to you.
It does. It does.
Yeah. Sorry, I apologize if that.
Oh no.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense because the examples of queerness that I had were white. Right? At that time, I didn't know about Audre Lorde. Like I was never exposed to folks like her until later in life. I had teammates who were queer, but they were white. The examples I had in the media were white people. And then like the few examples you had of like Black gay people like had to do with like AIDS and HIV. It wasn't like a positive rendering.
Yeah. But to me, you just really opened up something in me as far as just the representation in that area for you, like, because it was so white, it was like, oh, wait a second, like this is not I could see how that could be psychologically like a kind of a wrestling match for the fact that like it's like, oh, this is not something that a Black person claims that they are. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because all I've seen is, and if they are, then it's connected to these things. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Sorry.
No.
Yeah.
Representation though, like really means a lot to me. And that's why I create art in the way that I do. Just to be able to have kids and adults see something of themselves, if not their whole selves, in my art. Maybe I am processing, my own experiences in a way to kind of like work through those. What's the word I'm looking for? Kind of juxtapositions of different identities and where I felt clashes and where there shouldn't be, clashes.
And so really quick, how did your parents take it?
Oh, my dad was like, okay.
A lot of times they're like, we knew,
Yeah. My mom, wasn't upset, but she took some time to get used to the idea. And later on when we talked about it, she said her responses were more related to like fear, being afraid for me of like how I would have to navigate the world, with, like I said earlier, another marginalized identity.
Yeah, so. For sure. And so let's move into your art.
Okay.
So you're playing soccer. What puts it into that journey and the passions behind it?
The passion behind soccer?
Yeah. And then turning the corner to either what career did you land in, and then your art.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of episode 23. We hope you love Jess's story. Stay tuned for part 2. Thank you for joining us for the Multiracialverse podcast. My name is Antonio Fernandez. You can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Huge shout out to my friend Johannes Skoda for mixing and creating the intro music, and DJ Kazam for the track.